Kane Minkus started his first business at 19 years old at the entertainment industry. He's been passionate about launching, growing, and scaling companies to a high-value exit. Since then, he has been a partner in over 40 companies, personally advised over 20,000 startups and scale-ups, and a few dozen large corporations, and taught over 3 million entrepreneurs on how to launch, grow, scale, and exit their companies. He's raised over 5 million to charities, helped build entrepreneur schools around the world, and focuses regularly to alternative energy companies. Welcome, Kane Minkus.
Hi, Aatu. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
How things have been? We met last time a couple of months ago in Arizona, and since then it's been Christmas and New Year and everything's.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. We have kids, so it's a lot of craziness. Everybody's off of their projects, off of their schools, things like that. And so we got full hands on deck here with the kids.
Got it. How was the Christmas in Arizona? I was there for Christmas a year ago, and it was kind of funny when people were putting Christmas decoration on cacti and, like there's no snow.
Yeah, well, so, I grew up in Chicago originally, so we had a lot of snow when I was growing up, but I grew up in Chicago, went to school in Boston, worked in New York. And so I really hit a point where I was like, I'm done with the winters and the snow. It was like, 19, 20 years old. And after 19 years of shoveling, not that I shoveled as a baby, but, just after a decade, I guess, of, spending all day long shoveling to get out of your driveway, I just decided to move to California. And I lived in San Francisco where there is no snow. I've lived everywhere else I've lived has been, essentially a no snow environment. And here in Arizona, we get no snow. Well, I shouldn't say in Arizona because we're actually 2 hours from a ski resort. But here where we live in the Phoenix area, there is no snow. But funny enough, it's been getting so cold here that they have been covering all the cactus with like these covers for the plants so that they don't freeze. And it looks like, they're trying to represent snow. So it's pretty funny.
Oh, really? Yeah. When I was there, the weird part was that at the mall, they had all this Christmas song, Christmas carols, and reindeers. And as I'm from Finland, we got a lot of reindeers in Finland. And right. The attitude of people in Arizona seemed to be that reindeer is like a unicorn. Like, it doesn't exist. It's a magical Christmas animal, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure people know whether reindeers are actually real or not, especially here. Because they're not here. 100%. They are magical for here. So...
All right, let's start about your entrepreneurial journey. I would like to hear the story, how it started, since it's a cool story. I heard it before, but could you tell it to me one more time?
Sure, absolutely. So my entrepreneurial journey started actually when I was a kid, because I grew up in a family, in a house where I had very, very traditional family, very traditional parents. Although I became a very, very successful entrepreneur, I did not grow up in any sort of environment like that at all. In fact, I grew up in the contrary. I grew up in an environment with a father who was very, very traditional. He was an accountant and a chief financial officer of a large company. He believed in that kids go to school, get good grades, go get their degrees, get their master's degrees, go to work for a corporation and work their way up, and then they retire at 65 years old. And that's their lives. That was his life, right? And I was absolutely not going to have that. I was the youngest of 3 children, and I had this wild creative side, and I wanted to be an artist and a musician. So I actually started playing piano and getting into art and music at 5 years old, and I loved it. It was my passion, and all I knew was that my dad made a lot of money, but he was always unhappy and always grumpy. So I just somehow at that age I went, money's not the pathway to success or happiness, or let's say happiness. At that time, as a kid, you don't care about money, you just care about being happy. And so I decided very early on that I was going to focus on doing things that I loved to do in life and not focusing on money. However, I grew up in a really, nice environment in terms of physical stuff. And so I got used to having nice stuff, and I wanted to have nice stuff. So I started to go, somehow we got to fuse these things together. How do you have a really fun life and make a lot of money? And that became an obsession for me many, many years later. So anyway, so as a kid, I was playing, performing. And by the time I was a teenager, I was performing all over because I was devoted to like just becoming a rock star. I just wanted to be doing music. I was like, music is fun, and that's what I'm going to do my whole life. I ended up performing all over. I was throwing huge benefit concerts by the time I was a teenager. And by the time I was, 18 years old, I ended up going to Berklee School of Music, where I was studying music. And I ended up becoming a record producer for Sony Music. And I ended up in New York working at the Hit Factory as a engineer and as a producer. I was tuning vocals for very famous artists. I got to work with a lot of famous artists. But at about 21 years old, Napster came along. And although I was, having a good time working with all these stars, really talented, I did not understand how to really generate a business. I was a contractor for them. And I basically had a job. I was just, I wasn't an employee, but I really had a job, and I didn't understand all those distinctions of what that means and how do you really create real value for yourself. So I ended up basically, Sony stopped paying everybody because Napster killed the industry, and everybody was really concerned about it. In fact, there's a great Netflix series that I was just watching about Spotify. If you happen to catch it on Netflix, all about the creation of the Swedish company Spotify, which was great. And it takes you through that time period, right about the early 2000s, where the record industry was a mess and platforms started giving music away. And it was a real chaotic time. It was a very, very, very big, transition in the media industry. And I was caught up right into that. So I ended up going into debt, living in New York. I called a friend who was a friend of mine from Berklee School of Music. He was living in San Francisco. And I said, hey, what do you think about us starting our own company? Now, neither of us knew anything about it. We had no idea. We'd never started a company before. We had dabbled in little, independent projects and, these charity concerts and things, but nothing significant. And he says, sure, sounds good. He was in California working with people like Kenny G and Mariah Carey and these people. And he was also experiencing the same thing. Wasn't getting paid anymore. So I moved out to California and I started sleeping on his couch because I was totally broke. I was like $60,000, $80,000 in debt on my credit cards, had no money. And we started our first media company. We had no idea what we were doing. We just worked really hard for 6 months, setting up the infrastructure of the company. And 6 months in, we had learned we made no money. We had no clients. We didn't even know what that meant at that time. And all we knew is nothing was happening. About 6 months in, my business partner comes into our...
Sorry, I don't ask, what happened in the 6 months?
That's a good question. Well, nothing of any significance around business success. But what was actually going on is actually we were doing many things that entrepreneurs do today, which are totally, I don't want to say wrong, but just they're not effective in where they want to go. And one of the things that I learned very early on is that as entrepreneurs, without proper guidance, we can end up putting our attention on things that will make no difference. We can spend a lot of time solving problems that will not actually equate to revenue or success. We can spend a lot of time solving the wrong problems. And that's what we were doing. We were building our business cards and our website and all these, things. And at some point, I went to a personal development event that I was very involved in at the time. I was very involved in personal development. And I met a guy at a seminar who stood up and he says, hi, I'm an executive coach. I just sold my media company in Los Angeles to move back to San Francisco and coach with my parents. And I thought, I need to talk to that guy. So I went up to him on a break at the seminar and I said, hey, we've got a company and we would love your help. And he says, great, what is it? And I said, it's a music company, a production company. And he goes, awesome. I just sold my production company. We were, top 3 or 4 in LA or something like that. He says, I know exactly what you need to do. I just sold that company. He says, how many customers do you have? And I said, none. And he goes, okay. It doesn't sound like a very good company. So I said, look, we're just getting started. We don't know what we're doing. So this guy really, which was just out of the goodness of his heart, took us under his wing, not for free though. I'll tell you that story in just a minute, but he took us under his wing and he started working with us in the company, coaching us and advising us. And although we were just one of many of his clients at that time, the first thing he said to us is, look, I'm going to help you guys. And I know you're totally broke, but I will not do it for free. And I'm not going to do it for free, not for me, because I can't charge you anything significant anyways, you're broke. But I'm going to charge you something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, maybe a little painful, so that when I ask you to do things that are uncomfortable, there's some sort of reason that you say, I'm going to do this even though I'm uncomfortable. And it's because I'm paying for it. And I better get my money's worth. And I didn't totally understand at the time, but I just said, sure, we need the help. So whatever you need. So I took on a job at night playing at a piano bar. I was playing at a cabaret piano bar in San Francisco. I had pack in a room of 300 to 400 people in this bar. And I would play, cabaret at night. I'd make a few $100s a night playing as a piano singer, a piano vocalist. And then during the day, we were working on this business and we were getting coached by this guy. Well, this guy was so amazing. And not only him, but his whole family were incredible executive coaches. In fact, top executive coaches in Silicon Valley, that in 4 years, they coached us to have the 5th largest media company on the planet with what we were doing. And what we ended up specializing in was creating soundtracks for multimedia, video games, and animation. So we worked on everything from films to television shows to lots and lots and lots of video games. We ended up working with people like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and Robert Zemeckis. We did the Polar Express, which was, we did a few films and then we kind of refocused into video games. We did thousands of video games with LucasArts and Disney and, Electronic Arts and Microsoft. And we just exploded. And I realized that having talent, having drive is not enough. You also need great direction and wisdom and experience from people that have been there before and somebody outside of you helping guide you so that you can make the best decisions and move as fast as possible.
So that wasn't the industry Rockstar yet, right? That was way before.
No. That was actually a company called Somatone, and actually still goes on to today. I've sold out of it about maybe about 8 or 9 years ago now. And I ran it for many years until we hit really high acceleration, and then kind of went passive to the board, and I started just advising the executive team. But no, that was one of actually many companies. And so what happened was I said, wow, we did that really fast. That's pretty cool. Just took a few years. And I felt like I had all this wisdom around how to build a business. And I had many other interests. So I loved food. So we got into restaurants. I loved, media and entertainment. So we got into other entertainment type of businesses. We got into also internet businesses at that time. We got into e-learning companies. We had a scrap metal business. We raised $10 million and bought and sold internet business. I was like, let's go. I just felt like the matrix of life opened up, because I really actually understood how you have an idea and turn it into a highly valuable functioning system called a business. Now, not everything we did was a success. So let's just be clear. By the time I was 29 years old, I had started and created and launched or acquired 24 different companies. Some of them were total disasters and a mess, but many of them ended up at 8 figures a year or high 7 figures a year. And so we had enough successes to really outweigh the mistakes and the messes that we made. And of course, we learned every single time what was working and what was not working. So at 29, I basically, sort of semi-retired. And I started a training company where I started training other entrepreneurs how to do what I had been doing for that decade.
What do you think? Was there one core epiphany, like realization of what you got that enabled you to start all these companies?
So I got like 10 million core realizations. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted me to give you one kind of big kahuna, one big mama realization, it was really in sales. And that was that I had a whole different understanding of how to engage with somebody, understand what they need or what they want, take them through a process where they were willing to hand over money in exchange for something of value. And it wasn't always what I had. Sometimes I actually would discover in a process with somebody that the best solution for them was something I didn't have, but I could sell them somebody else's solution and go and white label it or get it or send it to them and make commission off of them. And I realized that everybody I meet in the world, I could be helping, supporting, or serving in some way to help them move their professional life forward, their business, their company, whatever, and make money off of every single engagement of everybody while I was helping people and really just heart-centeredly looking to make a difference with them. And that was a huge shift. That was a big shift. And it was something that I don't think my dad ever understood being an employee, because as employees, as you go through school, you get trained in school, you get trained, as you go to work for somebody. To this day, my dad's worked for me now for 10, 12 years. He's been our CFO at our company, recently retired just because of his age. And he was an amazing contribution to our company. But he really never understood the entrepreneurial thing, even though he loved it. It takes that evolution of being able to move past concerns and fears and evolve as a person. And even just here at the holidays, we were talking about my 13-year-old son. My 13-year-old son he's got his own business now, because our kids know they're going to be entrepreneurs. Like our 7-year-olds or 8-year-olds, she's just turned 8. Our 8-year-old has her own business. Our 13-year-old has his own business. And when I say he has his own business, he's doing almost $2,000 in sales a month right now at 13 years old. And we're looking to ramp him up. He wants to sell his first business in the next couple of years for 6 figures. And so we train them very early. And funny enough, we were talking at holiday dinners, and my son says that he wants to go to Stockholm School of Economics, which is a top international business school. And I was like, awesome. And my dad says to him, what do you want to do after that? And he says, well, I'm not really sure. My dad says, well, you can go to work for somebody and start to learn, what you want to do. It's a great way to do it. And I was like, no, he's not going to work for anybody. We had this whole family little argument here. It's like, he's going to start his own business. He's going to bring in advisors, and his advisors are going to help him cut his teeth on his own businesses. Because why train to go work for other people when you can just start at the beginning training how to run successful businesses? It's like, if you want to be a tennis player, you don't go learn baseball. You don't go learn cricket. You don't go learn football or soccer. If you want to be a tennis player, you learn tennis. You become great at it. And you learn by getting on the court and playing. You don't learn by watching. You learn by getting on the court and playing. So that was one of my beliefs, my core beliefs. Go ahead.
So what kind of businesses your 8-year-old and your 13-year-old actually have?
Well, so we actually get approached by a lot of young people who are interested in entrepreneurship. We've actually created many programs for young people and helped a lot of young people. It hasn't been our core focus, but we've had a lot of them come through with their parents, or their parents bring them to our seminars, because our seminars are, I don't want to say they're child friendly, but they're very entertaining, so anybody can enjoy them. And a lot of the younger people are interested, you would think, in technology, but we don't find that as much as I would have thought. They're actually very interested in physical products. And in talking to a lot of teenagers and young people, I think it's a very tangible thing that they can understand. Maybe they can create something. So my daughter at 8 years old, she has a fashion brand where she creates, I'm just thinking about whether I have something sitting around me here. I don't. I actually just moved it to my other office. But she creates, first of all, she creates these shoes where she decorates them with all these different jewels and gems. And she's got hats that she decorates with all these, hand decorated and all these jewels and gems. And she's sold, I think, about $1,500 or $2,000 since she started over a year. And she sold them to her friends. She's done business fairs. She's gone to farmers markets and things, and she sold them. And sometimes she takes custom orders because she doesn't always know what the size of the shoe or the hat's going to be. And she's starting to do water bottles and all that stuff. And she's also looking at how does she, my kids are just like me, inherently lazy. So we don't want to do all the work. We want to mastermind it and think about it and make the money, but we want other people to help us and have teams and rely on great teams. So my son's doing the same thing. He's starting to look at, we were just working on how he can be shipping nationally and internationally because most of his sales have been going on locally. So I took him over to FedEx and UPS and the local mail. And we started comparing how can he as a small business ship and be able to still maintain good margins. And so it's just, I didn't answer your question. He creates dog baskets. So he does high-end dog baskets. So when people want to give a gift to somebody who has a dog, he creates these seasonal, like Christmas dog baskets and Valentine's Day dog baskets and July 4th baskets and all the different holidays. He's got these really cool baskets and just high-end stuff instead of kind of crappy stuff that typically goes in dog baskets. And he's been crushing it. And part of the reason he crushed it is because it's a great story. People love it. He's 13 years old. Same thing with my daughter. She's 8 years old. Like, they love the story. And one of the things that I've taught the kids is that you're selling the story of your business and you're creating a story that's going to create your brand, which is going to create your valuation. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question on two, but that's what we're doing with them.
Yeah, I got it. How did Industry Rockstar came to be then from Somatone and all these companies that you had when you were 29?
So, I mean, the real story behind why Industry Rockstar came to be is there's a few things that came together. One is, although my dad was a CFO or has been a CFO his whole life, my older sister at some point was diagnosed with learning disabilities. She was about 7 or 8 years old, and the school called my parents and they said, your daughter's falling behind. She's not able to keep up. She maybe even been 9 years old or something, but it was really just about the time I was born because I'm about 7, 8 years younger than her. And my dad said, we've got to help her develop. And I don't believe the school is doing the job. And my dad was never quite a very good student either. He had some issues with his eyes, and therefore he had a belief that the school doesn't really educate, that the parents educate their children. And it's the parents' responsibility, not the school's responsibility. And he just felt he had a very negative relationship to school. So of course I never even finished school. And I don't think my dad even finished school either, right? But yet very successful in his executive world. And so we all kind of learned early on that the schools are not doing the job. So my dad actually started researching and studying and working with child psychologists, some very famous ones, on how children's brains develop. And he ended up creating a process and a patented process on how to help children increase their intelligence. It was actually quite brilliant. It was very ahead of its time, in fact. He packaged it up into a company, and they did okay. He made some money at it. This is why I was saying my dad was never quite the entrepreneur he wanted to be. And I think he never quite understood, but he was brilliant at the concepting and the creating. And without going too much into his world on entrepreneurship, what happened was in my family, for about 20 years, they were kind of running this little small business in the background with a technology that was brilliant around how to help children develop their minds. So I was raised in this whole family around how do we help people achieve at the highest level. So I was always fascinated by it. And I got into it very, very early. I was the guinea pig of all their games and their books and their toys from around the world that they were using, Mensa games that they were bringing in. They were always testing things on me to see if they were interesting enough to carry in their business. In the meantime, I started getting into human potential seminars and workshops and books and all this stuff by the time I was a teenager. And I started to understand that there is a way that people can advance and accelerate and develop their abilities beyond what they were given or what they think they can do. So I truly believe, and I've seen this now, I'm 44 now, and I've been doing human potential work with other people for 25 years since I was 19. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the point is, I've seen anybody create anything. Like, there is no limit on what a human being can create or can do. It doesn't matter where they came from, what their background is, how intelligent they were, how good they were at school, what color they are, what religion they are. Like, all of that is unimportant as far as I've ever seen. Human potential is unlimited. And so what happened with Industry Rockstar is at some point I had run a lot of my own companies, and I felt like I had a lot of the secrets to how to concept something, create something, launch it, grow it, scale it, and exit it. And I just felt it would be almost like my human duty to share that wisdom with others instead of just continuing to do it for myself. I almost got a little bored. We were constantly launching companies, growing them, having success, exiting them. Like it was just like, I kind of did that. Like, how do I contribute back now? And funny enough, at that same moment, my friends started saying to me, how are you doing this? Like they kept watching me start one business after the next, after the next. And many of them at that point, they were saddled with debt from their MBA programs, from their law programs. They'd gotten out and they thought, oh my gosh, I've done my schooling. I'm now an MBA. I'm going to go make a ton of money and become rich. And they ended up realizing that they started at the bottom. They had tons of debt. They were totally not excited by the work they were doing. They were being, kind of condescended to from the older generation that they were working for. And they were like, this sucks. And here comes me starting business after business after business, having a blast. I mean, I'm working my butt off, right? That's called running a business, right? You're working your butt off, but having a blast, building all these businesses, creating massive wealth, investing in and it's always so they started saying to me, how are you doing this? So I said, well, I'll teach you. And I ran my first seminar just to share with some of my friends. And I thought this was really fun. Like I could do this. Like this could be my next gig. And I ended up inviting a friend of mine who was also a really great entrepreneur and helped me invest in a bunch of opportunities over my 20s. And his name was Jeff. And Jeff and I launched this company together to basically teach people what we were doing to create massive wealth whenever, like on demand, wealth on demand. Like that's what it is for us. Anytime, any economy we've gone through, the crash of, the 2000s with the internet stuff. We've gone through September 11th, where the economy stopped. We've gone through the 2007 crash in the markets where everything was crazy. We've gone through, a couple of other craziness and then COVID, and like, it doesn't matter. Like we just keep shifting and shape shifting and creating new ideas, launching new businesses, taking them up and selling them and having a good time. And so the idea of Industry Rockstar was to just train entrepreneurs who didn't have the access or the money to hire great advisors and give them world-class business advice so that they could achieve whatever they wanted.
How long you ran Industry Rockstar so far? It's at least 10 years, right?
Longer than that. So we started in 2007 officially, and it's 2022 as of this recording. So we are, and I actually started about 2005 leading seminars, but it was really official in 2007. So it would have been, I remember it as 17 years. I guess it's going on about 17 years. So that would be, 2007, it'd be about 15 based on 2007. So it's about 15 to 17 years. We've been running seminars and workshops and all that stuff. And we've done it all over the world. I've been in, I think about 40 countries. We used to go prior to COVID to 32 countries a year, every single year, either myself or trainers of ours run workshops, sometimes smaller, sometimes massive. Some events we would have 50 people in, some events we would have 20,000 people in. And some events we'd bring in Tony Robbins or we'd bring in Richard Branson or, huge celebrities and big, business brains. And sometimes we just get in a room of 80 people and we would just transform those people in a little mastermind on an island or something, right? So we've been in every formation. We've done over 2,500 of our own events. And we've coached people on thousands of their events. So it's just been a major run.
So far, what has been your favorite social project you've done with Richard Branson, for example? You've done a lot of cool stuff with a lot of other people too.
Yeah.
What are the highlights?
So we naturally, we look at our success and impact and visibility as an important force for good, right? So while we're running these things and helping people make lots of money, we feel like it's always been a responsibility to support people, or, to me, even Industry Rockstar, it's like, we give so much more than we ask for, for people. We always look at our mentoring programs as like a drop in the bucket for what we give them. So, but when it comes to like supporting nonprofits or actually charities, we've worked every year for 17 years. We've worked with tons of them, and either raising money for them or training them. And in fact, right now we're on the board of a company that's a technology platform called Snowball Fundraising that has helped 15,000 nonprofits fundraise for their projects. And so it's a very important part of our world is the nonprofit or these fundraising events. So we worked with great groups like Virgin Unite and Amnesty International who do great work. And every group we work with does great work. So it's hard to say which one's my favorite one. But I'll tell you one that I love the story of, and Amnesty's got a great story, and Virgin United's got a great story, and Richard's an amazing, person in general. So they're all cool, but there's one story I'll just share with you because I think it's a really kind of a heart jerker, or a tear jerker, I should say. And that is, we met when we were in Australia. We were touring Australia, and we were one of the biggest training groups in Australia for many, many years. We ended up training like 80,000 businesses throughout Australia and New Zealand. And while we were there, while we were running an event, there was a guy that came up to us who was a doctor. And he said, "You guys are amazing, and I love your events. They're so full of positive energy and great. Like, I love it. And, you pack rooms, thousands of people sometimes." And he says, "We're wondering if you'd be open to helping us in our mission." So we said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "Well, what I do is I run a nonprofit called Surf Aid. And what Surf Aid is it's a bunch of doctors. And here's the story behind it, we love the story. So these doctors, they're all doctors in Australia, and they were all surfers. And at some point, they went surfing in Indonesia looking for that perfect wave. And they were in this kind of remote part of Indonesia in some islands surfing. And they kind of washed up on the shore as they were surfing in this remote area. And these like tribal leaders came to them, seeing that they were obviously not from there. They were, obviously white and Australian and just different culture. And they were asking them if they could help them, that they had a very serious problem in their village. And they said, "What's going on?" They said, "People are dying here and we don't know why. And they're dying left and right." And the guys were like, "Whoa, maybe we need to be careful," right? So they put on masks. They got, kind of suited up, and they were doctors. So they were comfortable with going in and dealing with what was going on. And they found out, which the tribe didn't know because they were not a modernized culture, that all these kids, hundreds and hundreds of children, were dying from malaria because the mosquitoes were so bad and the environment between the water and the homes was so bad that these children were contracting malaria and just dying. And, it was just a horrible scene. And the doctors were all so emotionally touched by, what a horrible situation was going on for these people that they ended up, it was like, I think about a dozen doctors that were there on this trip. They ended up all calling their accountants, telling them and their staff to just liquidate and sell everything, that they were going to take all their money and they were going to not come back home. I think most of them were single at the time. They didn't have any families or anything. They just liquidated all their practices. They sold all their clinics and they liquidated everything, and they put all their money into helping this entire culture throughout Indonesia, which ended up being multiple islands and thousands of people, and helping set up medical clinics, and helping set up mosquito nets, and just helping change the culture medically on those islands. And when we met them, they were several years in. They had saved hundreds of children from dying from malaria. And they were continuing to fundraise because they were running out of their own money. They were fundraising to continue these clinics to go on and keep spreading to other underprivileged areas throughout Southeast Asia. And these guys were just so cool. Like, they were just such sweethearts and just like super cool guys. And we loved what they were up to. So we ended up combining forces and helping them fundraise in our seminars and our events by having our students, we would teach them business principles to help them make more money. They would go out and they would make more money on the breaks, and they would commit to donating some of that new money to this charity, to this group. In other words, we did this cool thing where it wasn't like, just donate. I mean, that's okay. But we wanted them to say, "Hey, we will empower you with these business skills to make money. All we ask is that you take a percentage of those and you donate that to this charity that we're supporting," or any charity. We didn't want to lock them into that. But basically, people went out and they're like, yeah, they're fired up, and they go out and break. So like, "I just closed 2 new clients. They send me $8,000 as a deposit. I'm taking $2,000 of that and giving it to this charity." And we would create hundreds of thousands of dollars a month for this charity by playing these games. And it was just really fun. And the group was awesome. We ended up doing that with dozens and dozens of charities, because once one heard that we were doing that, they all came running and they're all like, "Hey, help us." Right. So that was a really cool story about nonprofits that we work with.
I see. How about Amnesty? I've seen the picture with you holding the Amnesty sign many times. And actually, I never asked you, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so we raised money for Amnesty. And actually, I don't remember exactly how we met Amnesty. I think we were in London doing a very big event, and we got approached by one of the leads at Amnesty who said, "We've heard about you. We know about your work. We know how you partner with nonprofits. We were wondering if we can sit down with you and show you what we do and have you help us raise money for our projects." So we said, sure. And we sat down and we watched their intro video, which explains where Amnesty came from. And that it's, all about it's all about rights for human beings, and that are in areas where the governments are not, treating the citizens well. And even right now, the Amnesty, I think, is in Ukraine, working to for the, rights for the people there. And just, they're always there trying to help people that are suffering from governments or something that's going on, politically or economically in the country. And so we watched this video and we were just totally moved by what they were doing. And so we started raising money for them in very similar fashions. We would have them come into our seminars and our conferences and our bigger events, and we would support them by helping raise money. We must have raised a couple $1 million for them over the 12 or 18 months that we were together working with them. And they invited us to their offices. And that's where I was at their offices, and I grabbed a big, poster that says amnesty. And I don't remember what it said exactly on the poster, but it's just something about their values. And I just took a picture while I was at their office, and that's where that picture came from.
Got it. All right. I wanted to ask, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, they come through your seminars, and you've seen it all. And a lot of them want to create an impact in the world. A lot of them are about something. How many actually end up making a difference? What is the pattern you see?
Well, the question of how many make a difference is 100%. So to me, if you make a difference with one person or in one community or in one area, to me, you've made a difference. Like I don't measure, somebody's impact worth based upon how many, you got to hit 1,000 people or you got to make a certain amount of money. So to me, they've all made a difference. And that's why I love the work that we do, because even if one person that we empower goes out and empowers one other person with their products, their services, their technologies, to me, that's a way of extending our gifts into, making a difference on the planet. So it's probably a little bit more of a holistic answer than you were looking for, but so tell me more. Are you wondering how many of them create a 6-figure business or a 7-figure business or an 8-figure, or is it just how many go out and get a chance to do what they want to do? Or tell me how would you want me to measure that in terms of answering that question?
Well, how would you define as impact business generally? A lot of people they want to get into business and want to create an impact in the world instead of creating a lot of profit for themselves. Do you see that sacrificing the other aspect of the business, and how do you see the whole concept actually? So
an impact business and making an impact are two different things. So an impact business is actually a business there's a certain criteria for whether you're considered an impact business. And funny enough, we're actually on the board and advise a couple of top investors and top fundraisers for impact companies. So we've had a lot of this conversation. There are specific criteria from the United Nations put out to say whether you are an impact business. And I think there's 12 or 14 criteria. And if you meet a certain amount of them, you're officially considered an impact business. Okay. When you are considered that, you then are then impact investment funds that specialize in funding businesses that meet those criteria, because there's a values. Like it could be family offices that say, we want to invest in companies that meet the impact criteria so that we are funding companies that are making a difference on the planet. Okay. And it could be how you manage your waste. It could be how you market. It could be how you do certain leadership principles. It could be the mission or purpose of your company. It could be the way you are interacting with communities or supporting them. There's several different criteria. But once you become a specific impact business, then you can get invested in by impact funds, right? So the term impact business, that's a specific terminology as far as how I look at it around fundraising. But to make an impact, are people making an impact? To me, I think that that's something that each person needs to design and define. How do you want to make an impact? Now, we tend to see people that are up to very big games. I want to help 1 million women be empowered to do blank. I want to help, 10,000 professionals escape their jobs and become an entrepreneur. So everybody we meet with has a different mission and vision about how they're going to make an impact. And so to me, success is when you have defined the impact you want to make and made it. If you want to say, I want to save 5 puppies. Okay, cool. I mean, it's a bit of a small game, but no problem. There's no judgment. It's just, hey, I want to help 5,000, IT professionals have a career that feels fulfilling to them, because I've got a system or I've got a platform where I can help. I mean, this is actually a real client that we work with. He's got a platform that helps engineers and IT professionals actually get fulfilling careers, and he's created this technology platform that matches corporations and IT professionals. Okay, great. So that was his idea of success. We helped him create the platform, and he's out there doing it. And to me, when he hits that goal, which I think he's pretty darn close to it now, he goes, hey, I've reached my success. The funny thing is that as soon as we hit our goals, we create new ones. So we're always on that train of making a difference and impacting people. And the bottom line to me is, what have you designed and defined as your impact number? And are you achieving it or not? That's pretty much how we look at it.
Got it. Have you seen the scene of impact business changing a lot in the last decade? What do you think it was like a decade ago and compared to now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what my wife and I do now, because I work together with my wife, Alessia, who, you probably see a lot of our branding, and naturally you too, we worked with a lot of, on our films and our branding, which is how we know each other. If anybody's listening, Aatu got recommended to us from a friend. He's done all of our film branding and now works on all of our clients and all of our partners branding. Like, we love him to death. He's an amazing, amazing filmmaker. But what we actually do now is we just simply advise companies that are scaling up. So we work with 7 and 8 figure businesses that want to scale up their businesses and their operations to make a bigger impact or eventually exit at a large investment amount so that they can release capital into the CEOs or founders' hands, who can then go on to build the next business or the next impact project. So what I find, and just by design of who I've worked with, is that people attracted to us are very heart-centered. They're very interested in making a big difference. They're very driven, and they want to make a positive difference on the planet. I don't know. I don't attract hooligans and charlatans and people that are just up for money. The people that we attract are always the people that want to make a big impact and make a significant amount of money, exit their companies for 100, 200 million, and build something that's going to, change carbon emissions, or, change the way we use energy, or do something, whatever, something like that. So the point is that what we do is we advise these people now to scale up their companies. So the face of impact companies has changed dramatically as we have seen more and more need for people to be aggressively driven to build solutions for our environmental issues. We've seen more hydroponics companies, more solar companies, more energy efficiency companies, more battery operated, technologies and transportation companies emerging. And a lot more interest from younger people to do things that will save the planet, save the rainforest, save the whatever. We don't have to save the planet, right? We got to save ourselves, really. But just change things like, new things they can put on the ground to reflect heat, so we're not getting as much heat absorbed into the ground, like new water irrigation systems, gray water, replenishment, all that kind of stuff. And whether we're in, we tend to work in media, in learning industries, in alternative energy, but we attract a lot of people that are trying to make a change. Somehow they're trying to make a big difference and a big change in their industries. And I have seen that sector grow massively over the last 5 years. I think COVID pushed it like way past where it even was. And people are more and more interested now than ever to build technologies and products and services that will serve humanity than I've ever seen before.
How would you define conscious capitalism? You use this word quite a bit in your seminars. And how do you define it?
We actually have a whole criteria. And I will say that, it must have been about 8 or 9 years ago, we created a conscious capitalism community, right? And we focused our advising on what we consider conscious capitalists. And it definitely resonates the impact criteria from the United Nations. We have a little bit different criteria. We have 12 pillars where we say, you're a conscious capitalist. Basically, it looks at things like how they are as leaders, authentic marketing, authentic sales process. So companies that we work with, we work on them creating, like every salesperson needs to learn to create urgency, for example. They need to create, they need to get people, they need to close customers and clients, or otherwise a company doesn't work. But a lot of salespeople result to gimmicky, shticky, or not honest techniques to get people to buy. And so when we work with companies, we make sure that they're ready for a conscious capitalist approach. And therefore, their marketing has to be authentic and honest. Their sales process has to be authentic and honest. Their leadership has to be conscious, aware. They have to practice things like emotional intelligence with their staff. And there's a whole set of different criteria. So we have a whole framework to conscious capitalism. We speak a lot about this because there are only a handful of us that are so outspoken that also have the results. There's a lot of people that want to scream, you should love people, but they don't have the results. And therefore they're not even though they should be, they're not as regarded that it works as much. And so we feel like it's our responsibility, having had a lot of success and having had a lot of conscious practices, that we go back and we be a large voice for all those people that are screaming, because they're all right. We need more conscious practices in business and in corporations.
What do you say are the key ingredients to a successful impact startup? When somebody wants to change something in the world, wants to create a business around it, what are the things that he has to take in consideration first?
The key, I don't think there's any difference between an impact startup and not. I mean, to me, every business is an impact startup. They're all impacting. I mean, whether they meet the United Nations impact criteria is a different story. But to me, every business is designed by somebody who says, I want to make a difference. That's why they're doing it. So to start any business that's going to make an impact, the very first thing I suggest every entrepreneur get if they're actually starting from scratch is to get an advisor on their team that has done it and been there before. They don't have to have done it from their same exact industry. That's not important, but they have a serial entrepreneurial background and they have moved into professional advising. And this is a big thing that people miss. First of all, many entrepreneurs, they never even get an advisor. They either go, oh, I'm getting started. I need to get started or have some success before I get an advisor. Wrong. Get an advisor at the very beginning. Okay. It's like getting a fitness coach. You don't get a fitness coach when you're, ripped and in shape and you're awesome. You get a fitness coach when you feel out of shape and you feel like everything's messy and you don't know, how to get there. That's when you get the coach. That's when you get the advisor. But you also get an advisor or coach when you want to take it to the next level. So if it's an entrepreneur that's already at 5 or 6 or even 7 figures, that's time to say, I want to go to the next level. And therefore I want to get an advisor who can help take me to the next level. Because advisors are not just about telling you what to do. Okay. They're also about helping you look at yourself and understand where you might be having some unconscious or blind spots or some unconscious limitations. And those are things that you simply can never figure out by yourself. So the more you try to figure out success by yourself, the more you're caught in that human trap of saying, I can do it myself. You simply can't do it yourself. You cannot achieve your highest level of potential by yourself. Human beings are not wired to achieve the highest levels of success by themselves. If we were, we would do it. We would have no wars because war is not a highly conscious experience between leadership. We're not designed for that. We are designed to reach higher levels of evolution and consciousness in reflection with each other. So if you want to be a top business owner, a successful entrepreneur, or a top leader or CEO or a 9-figure business owner, as I have coached dozens and dozens and dozens of 9-figure executives, business owners, and founders, they all have boards of advisors, CEO coaches. They love it, and they get them as early as they can in the process. So to me, that's the way you start. You start by getting an advisor on board with you, and you say, okay, coach, what do I do? What do I do next? Not because you're stupid, not because you're broken, not because you don't know, but because having somebody with you that can help you will make you even more superb and unlock things in you that you have not been able to unlock yourself.
What are your personal plans regarding Industry Rockstar in the future? The seminar space is maybe coming back after COVID. What's your take on that?
Yeah, we never really stopped. We just moved everything online, and we all started working online. And we've been running seminars. We're speaking at an event with a partner of ours who's running an event that's got almost 200,000 people registered in January for the event. So we actually found that actually working online made no difference in reaching people. There are some people that are not as excited or as hip to being online, that sort of they got a little bit left behind in that. So we look forward to getting back out now that COVID's kind of disappearing. Well, let's say it's getting managed. I'm not sure if it's disappearing, but it's just getting managed where people can go about their business. And so, yeah, we'll start running some events around the world again. I think not as much because people are willing to get online now, so we don't have to travel. And part of the sustainability of our business, which always sort of bothered me, but I just didn't quite take as much action as I should have until I really stopped with COVID. Like I said, I was traveling to 32 countries a year. Well, there's a lot of, gas, right? And fuel being burned by airplanes for me. I was leaving a big carbon imprint. And I guess I sort of justified it at that time by making a difference and helping people, but there's no justification. Like, we're at a critical point now where everybody needs to think about how they can support and be a voice for, just taking care of our planet in different ways. So we're not going to be doing a lot of events anymore simply because we don't feel like it's inside of our values of, flying our staff all over the world and having everybody fly in for events and create when we can do it online. So we're encouraging people to take advantage of the opportunity of being online. I know it's not quite as physical or quite as exciting as shaking our hands or getting a hug or, high-fiving someone or meeting someone and exchanging cards, but you can do it all digitally. And I think it's important that we start to shift to values that make a difference over, some human desires. And I think that's part of what that's what we learn as children as we mature. Is like part of maturation is to start to put what we know is right ahead of maybe what we desire in the moment. It's a muscle of discipline, and it's actually one of the intelligences a human can develop. And I think it's important that as a culture, as a humanity, as a species, we start to develop that muscle of intelligence, of discipline, that we start putting what is right for the planet or our own survival ahead of our desires. And that's going to be a tough one. This is the thing that humanity's up against now. Can we really do that? And we will see. We'll see.
100%. All right. The last question I want to ask you today would be, how would your future look like in 70 years? It's the Kane utopia. Everything's gone well. 70 years has passed and we teleport now there.
70 years, not 7 years.
70 years. We are in 2092. You look outside the window. How is the mankind if everything's gone well?
So, man, I hate to sound like, John Lennon or, Bono or this, but, a utopian future for me would be where my kids and my kids' kids do not have to worry about the stuff that we're worrying about today. They do not have to worry about, these conversations about cataclysmic climate change. And they don't have to worry about ridiculous wars of people that are, trying to expand their empires because they think there's some value in it and killing people over land. And like in a utopian world, to me, the ecosystem would be balanced and human beings would actually be able to find value in themselves from within and not externally. And I wouldn't expect it to be a perfect world, but it would be way, way, way better than this one. I mean, I hate to sound so, in a positive human evolution standpoint, I feel like we've evolved and come to every year we evolve to a greater and greater and greater place as a species. And then there's also where we evolve into a more and more dangerous place as a species. Like we're pushing all these boundaries out at the same time. And so I really hope that, we can find ways to put pressure. And I think, this war in the Ukraine, which is interesting to me, is an interesting set of pressures between a world that has gone to a place of going like, seriously? Like, really? Are we seriously doing this stuff still? Like, really? Are we really like threatening nuclears? Like, come on, serious? Like there's a whole sect of people going, are you serious? Like, are we really doing this? And then there's still, that mindset, right, of still going on. And I'd love to see in 7 years from now, an entire mindset that people can all agree to being one humanity instead of being separated by borders. I mean, again, this comes back to John Lennon, right? Imagine a world with no borders and no religions and where there's nothing that separates us, no colors, nothing, where it's just humanity and we're just contributing to each other. And that would be my utopian. So we'll see if we can get there. I'll do everything I can in my lifetime. We'll see what happens.
Sounds beautiful. Thank you, Kane, so much for this today.
Thank you
really
very much.
appreciate it.
Great to be here.